Hi, good morning, and welcome to the February 17th, 2017 edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. I'm your host, David Leary. I'm Intuit's Small Business Ecosystem Evangelist. You can follow me on Twitter at David Leary. You can follow Intuit Developer at Intuit Dev. Today, we definitely have two special guests who actually might be the only three-time guests we've had on the Hangouts. Vishal and Joe are back to talk about WebHooks. They're going to do an encore presentation of the presentation they gave in October at QuickBooks Connect in San Jose. I'll be getting to them next, but first I'm just going to cover a little bit of some housekeeping and some announcements that we have, exciting things with Intuit Developer. So the first thing we have is the $100,000 app Showdown is back. So if you publish your app on apps.com between August 16th of 2016 and August 15th of 2017, you are eligible for this contest. You do have to actually go to smallbusinessappshowdown.com and actually register and sign up for the contest. That's more of a legal hoop. So you go there, you say, yes, I want to be in the contest. The top 10 apps, as we run the contest, the top 10 apps will be brought to QuickBooks Connect. They will be given the ability to pitch in front of a judge, a panel of judges, and the top app gets to take home $100,000. So definitely smallbusinessappshowdown.com. And again, you have to publish your app on apps.com to be eligible for this contest. Another exciting thing we have going on, we're heading over to London. If my mouse will click the next slide. There we go. We're heading over to London just about 15 days from now, to do the QuickBooks Small Business Hackathon. And this is going to be held March 4th and 5th. We have great API partners joining us. Actually, I just did the earlier hangout with somebody from Estimote in regards to the hangout in London. And it's just an amazing little product. They have these little devices that connect anywhere you want to stick them, but they detect things about the environment, and then they have an easy API to access information. So information like light sensitivity, temperature, movement, sound, they are all in these little devices that just stick on, and you can, as a developer, integrate that stuff into your app, which is pretty exciting for to get going fast. Like, you don't have to build something from scratch from an Arduino, right? And these things last, they have batteries that last 5 years. So it's kind of amazing. So definitely come to the Small Business Hackathon, smallbizhack.com. Sign up for that if you're in the London area, the 4th and 5th of March. And that leads up to an even bigger conference and show, which is actually QuickBooks Connect. So as a developer, you want to come to events like QuickBooks Connect because at those events, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accountants. And you in your app, if you can reach one accountant, that accountant might implement your app to 40, 50, 60, 100 clients. So as a developer, it's really worth your time to come to an event like this, meet other developers in the QuickBooks ecosystem, meet small business owners, and definitely meet those accountants that are out there. And this is the 6th and 7th of March at the Historic Tobacco Dock, and that's also in London. So hopefully we'll see you guys at those events. And then just one last thing is, again, all the developer hangouts are on the developer site, developer.intuit.com/hub/events. And we will continue doing 2 a day for the rest of the month. We will be doing UK edition in early morning for us in the States. And that it will have the API partners from the hackathon. So the next week is going to be Amazon Alexa. So if you want to really learn about Amazon Alexa and that API, come to the hangout next week. That's going to be 5 a.m. Pacific time, though, so it is definitely pretty early for anybody in the States. And we will doing the normally scheduled hangout at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and we will be those will be again continuing the series of the QuickBooks Connect encore presentations like today. So without further ado, I'm going to get out of my PowerPoint here and switch back to my camera. So click sharing. So stop sharing. Here we go. That makes it easier. Okay, I've stopped sharing. Hopefully you guys can see me. Happy Friday. Vishal and Joe, I'd like to hand things off to you. And thank you for coming. Again, like I said, the record, you're the only triple guest that's ever been on 3 times, I think. So congratulations to both of you. And actually, Vishal, you may have been on 4 times. Just 3 times about WebHooks, but maybe on something else. So I'll hand off to you guys, bring up your slide deck, and jump in.
Thank you, David. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody, my presentation
It's working. Yep.
So, I'm Vishal Aggarwal, Senior Product Manager into a developer group. I've worked for almost and I'm of football and for last season. Well, I hope they do good this upcoming season. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Joe Bumbaca. I'm a senior software engineer here at Intuit. As a lead developer on WebHooks, been here for just over 2 years now.
Cool. So the agility, we'll quick the overview of web, some of the key enablers. Then Joe will um, actual on how it works and how to build it, payload details, supported entities and operate. What are some of the best practices you should be looking at implementing webhooks online, and map look like? So agenda for so with that, what does webhooks, right? It's basically it's enabling
Hey, Vishal.
user-defined in web application.
Vishal, can I interrupt you for a moment? Can you turn off your video just because it seems like there's a bandwidth problem on your side. So sharing is okay, but
Sure.
kill your camera actually. We'll see if it fits a little bit better. Go ahead and talk now, Vishal, and see how it sounds.
Yeah, so basically, what webhooks is basically a pattern of enabling and callbacks in web application. Um, what this means as a you are interested in event change happening within books online, and what it does is it provides a mechanism of receiving change events to a push model rather than a. So look at how do you listen ongoing events in QuickBooks Online for webhooks. So we have this change data API, the CDC API, and you as a developer, what you do is you continuous polling call via this API asking, hey, did something change? Did something change? And when finally something change, yeah, okay, you know what, this changed. So it's a problem where you are continuously, and a lot of time calls that you are making are actually required. For example, in this pitch I have, if you think about it, 2 or 3 calls were not required. The change only happened when you made the third call. So what are the limitations of the mechanism, right? It's basically complicated, and it is the integration cost for your developer, because you implement this whole costly mechanism of continuously polling online. And it's optimal experience for small owners as well who are using it, because there could be a data sink because you are currently polling. And if you're polling 1 hour, and if the change happened 15 minutes per hour, the business owner won't see the change till the hour, basically. It adds load developers as well as QuickBooks Online servers. You are continuously, and if every app developing us, that basically creates a problem of loading only your servers but our server. So this, how does webhooks solve, right?
Hey, can we pause again
With
for a moment,
webhooks, what
Vishal?
you do is,
Vishal, can you?
yes,
I don't know if your Wi-Fi connection's a little bad. Can you possibly move and see if it gets stronger, or try a different room, or if there's a hardwire, try to go to a hardwire connection. It's just it's pretty
let
watery.
me dial in via phone.
Try that. Okay, we'll wait. I do apologize for this for any of you that have joined the meeting. For the first half hour, he was here before we started, and it was fine. So I don't know if more people showed up to work and the bandwidth kind of got worse, but we'll keep on track. Are you back, Vishal?
Yep, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Oh, that's much better. Perfect. So
Okay.
Continue on. Sorry about that.
No worries. Sorry about that, actually. So how does WebHooks solve for this, right? WebHooks is a push mechanism as compared to a pull mechanism, where you basically come and tell us, hey, you know what, I'm interested in these change events, and this is my callback URL, and let me know whenever anything changes. So basically, when something changes at that time, we do a callback on that URL saying, hey, data changed, go fetch this data. So as you can see, it's a push compared to a pull, and it simplifies the integration for you as a developer because you don't have to now invest in this complicated polling mechanism. And it improves the experience for your users as well because the push of the change event that you get is almost instantaneous. And it also reduces load on our servers and your servers. So, basically WebHooks, again, it's the pattern of enabling user-defined callbacks, and it helps you in terms of getting the change almost instantaneously and at the same time simplifying the integration for you. Now, if we talk about some of the key enablers for webhooks, right? Notification. I wish I could get notification exactly how I want. For example, notify me when an invoice is paid, right? Data syncing. One of the most common patterns of integration that we have is where you want to keep the overlapping data in sync. For example, my customer information should be in sync between QuickBooks Online and my app. So you want to make sure that your data is always in sync with QuickBooks Online. Chaining, I wish I could make another app do something when I use my app. For example, if a new invoice is created in QuickBooks Online, I can automatically clear that with my app. So these are some of the key enablers, notification, almost near real-time instant notification, syncing of data, and having a chain of events where, a webhook comes in and it triggers another chain, which results in another use case being solved. So these are some of the key enablers of webhooks. With that, we would dive in directly into the demo, and I'll hand it over to Joe to go over the demo.
All right, so yeah, like Vishal said, we'll jump into a demo now. Just a quick check, David, is my audio all right? Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. What are you guys seeing on your side? I'm not sure if this is sharing. You seeing Google Chrome?
Yes, we're seeing Google Chrome. And then before I did see your IDE when you flipped over.
Okay, perfect. Okay. To start off, wanted to point you guys first to the github.com/Intuit developer. So this is where we place all of our sample apps. And so we have a few of them for webhooks. If we go here and just search off of webhook, we have the Java.NET and Node.js apps. So for this demo, I'm just going to run through the Java app. Just a quick background on the Java sample app. It's just a simple Spring Boot app. It has everything ready to go for you. You can go ahead and clone this and run it. There's a few things that, it's very simple. For example, there's no database or anything like that. It's using basic Java config in the form of .properties files to kind of store all of your stuff. But it gets the point across. And so if I jump over to the app here in IntelliJ, just a few things before we start actually deploying it and running through the demo. And so here is our basic entry point. This is sort of your REST endpoint, right? This is Spring Boot, but this could be JAX-RS, or if you're using pure Java servlets, it could be that too. The important things to note, though, are that you want to have an endpoint that we can post data to, right? So we want to be able to do an HTTP post to that endpoint with a JSON payload, as well as some headers, right? And I'll talk more about the important headers before. There's really just one that you guys need to worry about, and that's the Intuit signature. And so we'll talk more about that later. But this is the basic entry point. And then also what we have here is some properties. And so this is important here because if you're going to be when you get the webhook notification, you'll probably want to go and hit a CDC call, in which case you're going to need some of your OAuth data. And so jumping back over to here, right, how to set up an endpoint, right? So I'll show you how to set up a webhook through developer.intuit.com, and then the data that you would actually go ahead and put in those properties files to fill everything out. So right now I'm just logged into developer.intuit.com. This is the basic dashboard. If we go over to our settings, we'll see a section down here for webhooks. And so it's pretty basic right now. What we have is you specify your webhook endpoint. We give you a verifier token, and that verifier token is used. It's not required, but it's definitely recommended. It's basically a way to verify the authenticity of the payload that you receive. And I'll go a little bit into detail on how to actually use that verifier token to authenticate the payload. We have code that you can just go ahead and copy for that. And then the event triggers, and these are your QBO entities that you want to receive events for. For each event, there's a set of actions available too. For the most part, all entities support create, update, delete. There's a few entities that support merge. They're all listed in developer documentation. Also want to note that right now we're only supporting a subset of the entities. We should be able to continually add entities in the future. So let's go and jump back to IntelliJ, and we'll go ahead and deploy the application. So it's just simple as a Gradle W boot run. Let this guy do its thing. While that's running, I also want to tell you guys about a quick tool that we're going to use for the demo. It's called ngrok. So typically when you're testing a web service, right, depending on what your setup is, you may not be able to expose your endpoint to the internet, right? I have a public endpoint. So if you're testing something locally, you want to test out local code, but you want to be able to have some other client hit your endpoint, right? So ngrok allows you to use a public endpoint and have it tunnel to your local host. So that's what we're going to do here now that our application has started up, right? So we have the ngrok, just bring up our terminal right here, and I've already installed ngrok, and the command is very simple, right? It's ngrok http 8080, right? And so what that's going to do is that's going to set up a public endpoint that's going to tunnel to my local host port 8080. And as you can see here, it did that for both HTTP and HTTPS. And so it's also just, oops, wait, I don't even know. Actually, am I sharing? You guys seeing the console right now? The terminal?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah. HTTPS is important because that's a requirement for the webhook endpoint. It's got to be over SSL. And so what we do here is now that we've actually deployed our application locally, we have a publicly accessible endpoint that's going to forward traffic to our local host, right, where our app is deployed. What we'll do now is we'll go ahead and create the webhook, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy this endpoint, right? I'm going to go back to developer.intuit.com. And so what we have here is, this is an endpoint that I had previously. I'm just going to go ahead and modify that and put the new domain, the new host there, right? And I'm keeping the /webhooks because if you noticed in the Spring Boot app, the path was /webhooks. So that's basically our post, right? Do a post to /webhooks. And then we can go ahead and save that guy. And also, once you have this saved, you can still view your token right here. And as you can see, just if we go back to our app here in IntelliJ, if we go to our properties, that's where we stuck our token right here. Now, what we can do now is we have the app running. It's the webhook that's is available publicly on the internet for the service that we have running here. So what we can do is we can go to QuickBooks and we can run a test, right? We can go ahead and fire off an event. So right now I'm logged into QuickBooks as just a sandbox company, and it's just important to make sure that the company is connected to the app, right? So if you go under here, right, you can see your apps, and this shows up, right? This is this sample app that I made for purposes of this demo. So the company is subscribed to the app, right? So if we're in the role of the company now and we're in QuickBooks, we can go ahead and do some action, right? Now, if you remember, we subscribed to a few entities when we set up our webhook. One of those was customer. So if we go ahead and create a customer here in QuickBooks, so we just created a customer, George Washington, right? And we should see that guy here, right? So now what we would expect is we would expect to receive a notification to our webhook endpoint, right? And the way we can check that is, you can set up a debugger in your app if you want, but the quickest way is to use ngrok's inspect mechanism, right? And so this is if you have ngrok running, you can just hit this guy, localhost 4040, inspect HTTP, and this will any requests that go to that ngrok endpoint we set up, it'll be listed here. And so we should be seeing this event come in shortly. Just to note that events are aggregated over a 5-minute period, so it's every 5th minute that you're actually going to receive the collection of events. And okay, here it is. Yeah, here it is. So this was we got at /webhooks. This was our payload for our realm. And remember, it was just one event. We went ahead and created a customer. Now, if you note that the actual payload of the customer we created is not included here, that's why Vishal will talk more about this later in terms of best practices. But you can use webhooks as a trigger to go ahead and make a CDC call, because for sure that your data changed here, right? So if I go ahead and do a CDC call for this customer ID 76 for that realm, you'll get a payload back, right, with the data. So the other thing I wanted to talk about this guy is the header. So as I mentioned, that Intuit signature earlier along with the verification token. So I want to talk more about that. So we see here, right? Here are the headers that come in the request. One of these is this Intuit signature. And so all this comes from is what we do on our side is we hash the JSON payload using the verifier token as a key to that hash. And the hash is just a SHA-256 hash. And so what we recommend that you do on your end is just basically perform that exact same calculation when you get the payload, and just confirm that the signatures equal each other, and then that's kind of a way of authenticating the payload. And if I go back to IntelliJ, here we've basically provided a convenient method for you. There's this is in Java, but like I said, this .NET Node, and you can just go ahead and copy this code. You want to have something like a method called isRequestValid given a signature from the header and the JSON payload. And this is just performing that exact calculation I just mentioned and comparing the what you got versus what we sent you. And that's how you can check whether a request is valid. And so yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the demo. We saw the whole flow of setting up the sample app, triggering an event in QBO, seeing that event come in, and that's pretty much the whole flow right there. So Vishal, I can turn it back to you right now.
Thank you, Joe. So as Joe just went over the whole demo, I quickly wanted to go over what the payload, when you receive the webhook notification, what the payload looked like. So, you get an event notification, which is an array of all the notification changes. Although currently this is an array, what happens is you get one webhook event for each realm ID or basically each company ID. So if your app is connected to multiple companies, you will receive multiple event notification depending on which company has had changes. If we actually look over the payload, it's pretty straightforward. You have the realm ID, which is the ID of the QuickBooks company that has changed data. Uh, Name is basically the name of the entity type that has changed. So it could be customer, invoice, or whatever entity that was actually changed. ID is the ID of the entity that changed. Operation could be create, update, delete, or merge. Last updated is the last updated timestamp in UTC. And then in some operations, you will see deleted ID as well. And deleted ID is for merge events. The deleted ID is the ID of the entity that was deleted and merged, basically. If we talk about the supported entities and operations, these are the different entities that we support: account, bill, pretty self-explanatory here. And as Joe said, we'll be adding more entities as we go along. The operations that are supported are create, update, delete, and merge. Merge is the operation where basically, say you merged two customers into one customer. In that scenario, you will get a deleted ID of the ID that was of the customer that was deleted and merged into the real one. I do want to talk a little bit around the best practices you should follow when you are integrating with WebHooks for QuickBooks Online. And primarily, those are around reliability, responding promptly, managing concurrency, notification ordering, and retry policy. So we'll deep dive into each one of this. Reliability. So, we as a platform make sure that, try our level. We are a best case scenario where we make sure that you get all the events. However, there could be a scenario where some of the events could be dropped. So in order to compensate for the possibility of missed or dropped packets, you should make a TDC call for each entity received up to the last notification time upon the receipt of the new notification. So what this means is basically you get a webhook notification, use that ID or use that last timestamp and make a CDC call. That way, even if you missed some events early on, you would still be able to capture to all those change events until that last updated timestamp. You can additionally make a CDC call daily to make for all entities to ensure that your database is consistently up to date. Again, this is an optional step, just in case you want to make sure that and the sync of data is critical to your app. Then you can make a CDC call daily to ensure your database is consistently up to date. Respond promptly. So basically, when we make a webhook call to your endpoint, the endpoint should respond within 3 seconds. Otherwise, the transaction will time out and be retried. So to make sure that you respond back to us within those 3 seconds, what we recommend is you do not process the notification payload or perform complex operations within the webhook endpoint implementation. Rather, what we recommend is you put the event in a queue or a separate synchronous thread and basically process it on a separate thread. That way, as soon as you receive the event, you can promptly respond back to us. Managing concurrency. So as I said, event notifications are sent for each realm ID at a time. And when there are multiple changes happening rapidly, your app could receive notifications frequently. So you should make sure that you're processing the queue linearly to avoid processing the same changes more than once, basically. Ordering of notifications. So while we make best effort to make sure that the events are sent in order, it is possible to receive an older event in a subsequent notification. And that's why what we recommend is that the event timestamp field in the notification payload, you use that as a source of truth when an event has occurred, rather than looking at the order in which you received the event. And then finally, our retry policy. So basically, if your endpoint is down or if your endpoint is experiencing some issues, we will try to send you events again. So the first time it would be after 20 minutes, then again after 30 minutes, and the final third time after 50 minutes, after which we will drop the message. And if your endpoint is not active for a day, we will mark your endpoint as inactive. So, make sure that, your endpoint is uptime is pretty solid so that you don't run into this issue. So given that, and how you saw how webhook works, what are the different integration patterns and best practices, what are we looking into the future? Like, what does our roadmap look like? What do we want to support in the future? Basically, we want to support. So today, you can only do subscriptions through the developer portal. What we want to get to a point is where you can do API-based subscription on a per company level. Today, we allow basically our aggregation period is over a 5-minute period. So we would like to provide a way for you to configure that aggregation period as to how long or how short you want that aggregation period to be. Event log viewer, where you can actually view all the webhook events that were sent to you in the developer portal, and as well as capability to replay those events from the developer portal. So these are some of the things that are on our roadmap, and we are looking into the future into building this. So with that, that basically covers our whole webhooks presentation.
Great. Thanks, guys. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute, or if you're having microphone problems or don't feel comfortable talking, you can always use the chat and I can read those questions out loud. So since I know you did this presentation, Vishal, and Joe, you did this in, I think it was October. Has there been any new webhooks functionalities that has came out in the last six months?
So we did add support for more entities after our presentation, or just before our presentation actually, and we are working towards some more enhancements right now, and hopefully in the upcoming months we'll have some more enhancements coming out.
And now that it's been out a while, are we seeing like effects on server load because of webhooks now, or just in general, are we seeing some app developers just have way more efficient experiences with us because they've completely refactored and read some of their code to have better using the webhooks as they're instead of polling us every 5 minutes, they're not using webhooks, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we've had some great success stories, and we have a lot of developers now who have switched over to webhooks. And actually, I was talking to one of the developers, and he mentioned that webhooks helped reduce the server cost by 3/4 because he didn't have to invest in all the polling mechanism and all the hardware and infrastructure associated with it. So. And for that same developer, we saw the API calls drop down a lot because he was not polling anymore. So definitely a lot of great success stories there.
That's really interesting. So not only does it save server load on our side, it actually used the developer save server load on the developer side too. That's really awesome. That's great news.
It helped reduce his infrastructure cost, like by 3/4. So that's
we got to get the guy to tweet about that. Like we need to get him. You need to start telling people who that is. Whatever app that is, they need to talk about that. That's good news. Good news. Again, if anybody wants to ask a question, Hubai, Jack, Jonathan, Matthew, Scott, please feel free to unmute and jump in.
I've got a question. Does the obviously if you set up a webhook for invoices, for example, then you'll get notified for them. But if you then use it to just kind of make a CDC request for everything that's happened since then, could you also get entities that aren't supported by webhooks kind of as a while you're there kind of thing? Could you make your CDC request cover everything, but just use invoices as a sync point? I suppose kind of the example I'm looking for is if you were only interested in invoices, but an invoice was attached to a customer that didn't previously exist, could you configure your CDC request to also return the customer because it would have been new since you were last checking? I hope that makes sense. I'm not explaining it very clearly.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand your use case, and actually, the CDC call, you can actually specify the entities that you want as a part of that change data capture query. So let me just quickly make sure that what I'm saying is correct, because when you make a CDC call, you can actually say what entities you are interested in. So just give me 1 sec here, and I will bring it up. Just 1 sec. Uh, ta, ta, ta. Yeah, so let me just quickly share my screen here. So you guys can see my Chrome.
Yep, it just caught up. Perfect.
Okay, so this is the CDC, basically the data consistency guide. And if you look here, what you can do is you can specify the entities that you are interested in. So for example, in your scenario, what you can do is entities equal to invoice, comma, customer, and change since you can use the timestamp. So that should solve for the use case that you're looking for.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
You mentioned that the endpoint gets marked inactive if you're not online. What happens then?
So what we will do is we will reach out to you before marking it as inactive. So we just want to make sure that we are not constantly sending out events to an endpoint that is not active. So we'll reach out to you and make sure hey, is there something wrong or your endpoint is down before we remove it out of our database.
Because we haven't gone live with webhooks yet, but when you use ngrok, it kind of goes away, right, when you're reboot or something. So I mean, but I've never heard, you've never reached out to me.
We don't look at the ngrok ones because we assume that those are the test ones.
Okay. Because I also have it I've linked it into our beta, and it has probably gone away also. How do you reach out? What do you do?
No, I will email you basically.
Okay. All right. The other thing is that really threw me off was the fact that I use the modification timestamp, which I guess is in GMT, and so I would do a select all the transactions that have modification timestamp after that time, but you have to switch it over to Pacific time, right? When you make that query.
Joe, you wanna you mean the CDC query?
I mean a query, just select star from invoices with modification stamp after a certain timestamp.
I will have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, we'll have to look back. We'll have to look into that, but I believe we set up the timestamp. Excuse me. The timestamp that comes in the payload should be in the same format as that of the CDC call. But you're saying you're seeing otherwise?
Right. They're not the same. I have to do a time shift to make it work.
Okay. So let's look into. We'll look into that then. And maybe we can get your contact information and reach out to you once we figure that out.
Yeah, if you change it, but you got to let us know. That would really mess things up.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah. We're not gonna. Yeah. We'll look into it, find out what's going on. Reach out to you. We'll update everything if we do make a change.
Okay, great.
David, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was just asking if anybody else had any questions. And for some of you that are new, thank you for coming. Hope you feel welcomed and you want to come to more in the future. If you came just because you specifically wanted to learn more about webhooks, this is your chance, right? These are the two guys that may know more about webhooks than anybody else at Intuit right now. So I would say definitely ask your questions to these guys. Joe and Vishal, what would you say, like, obviously you understand QuickBooks webhooks really well. Do you, and you looked at a lot of other companies and how they've implemented webhooks, I imagine, and other apps. Is there any like outstanding examples that are like, oh wow, this app or that company really nailed their webhooks really well? They built it really well.
So there's a few. Specifically the GitHub webhooks. I really like how they do things. And Vishal mentioned some enhancements that we want to do later on, and some of those are already what GitHub's doing. For example, something I really like about that is GitHub actually in the UI for the webhooks they show a log of basically all the requests they've made to your webhook endpoint. So you can actually see right there in the UI which ones failed and all that stuff. And I believe there's even the option to go ahead and replay failed events, failed notifications. So that's those two things I think are something that'd be really, really great. If your endpoint is down for whatever reason, or we weren't able to deliver whatever, you'll see it right there, right there in the UI, very simple to log in. And you don't even have to reach out. You can just go ahead and start replaying those events. I think that'd be great to have that in the future.
Yeah, I can see how that could be helpful for sure. Cool. If we don't have any other questions, I think I'll give everybody back the rest of their day and see everybody next week. Again, go to developer.intuit.com/hub/events, and you can see all the future Hangouts there. Hopefully I see a lot of you guys back next week. If you're really aggressive, so those of you in the States, show up at 5 a.m. Pacific for the UK edition, which will be having the Small Business Hack API partner, Amazon Alexa, will be there talking about their Alexa APIs, which is very, very exciting. It was one of the most popular things for people to hack on when we were at the San Jose Hackathon. So it's nice it's good to know that Amazon's actually going to be there providing assistance and help for the folks that want to hack on that. So again, thanks everybody for coming, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.